All right. It's a little weird. Tried to set up streaming. I guess you have to wait 24 hours for some kind of approval. That's fine. So I'm going to try to do this a different way. So, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? Um, isn't streaming your thing? Not mine. No, that's true. Um, I don't disagree with that at all. Uh, but, my father in law, he did a lot of streaming of the various things that he did around the house, his art projects, his cooking projects, things like that. He did a lot of streaming. Um, and after he passed away, that just it became such a valuable thing, um, to be able to go and see what he's doing, to remember his influence and his ideas. Um, Honestly, just to remember him. Um, and I just thought, what a neat thing! What a neat thing to do as a dad, for your kids to, um, create content that they can then enjoy, um, maybe after you're gone, uh, and it's just sort of been in the back of my mind, as I've watched, Esther go back to those videos and watch what her dad was doing and remember him, and have that connection with him. I've just thought, man, what a neat thing to do. I'd love to do something like that, so my kids have a way of seeing what I was doing. Um, so I think that's kind of what I'm trying to do. I plan to do this maybe for an hour or so each day. I think right now my goal is I'm hoping to be able to do it every day, every weekday. Um, I think for my kids it's a little strange, because they spend the majority of their time on the computer, playing games, which is fine with me. Obviously, I don't have a problem with that. And then they also they know that I spend my time on the computer. Um, and one of the things that Esther has observed is that I'm always telling the kids not to come behind my desk, and that's true. I really don't like having people looking over my shoulder, while I'm trying to do things. I get really irritable about it. But one of the bad parts of that is that my kids, they don't see me doing anything on my computer. They might catch a glimpse here or there, but I really feel like, um, there's no example of what I'm up to. And when I say that I'm working, they don't. There's no reference point for that really. So I guess one of my goals is to just kind of give a picture of what kind of stuff I'm doing, when I'm working on my computer. Um, give a picture of my process as well. I think everybody has a different process, different things that they would consider useful, uh, or a good way to do things. Sometimes you can learn better ways to do things. I think, in particular, as it relates to the process that I'm currently using for this project, the project that you see on the screen, this is a project that I'm doing. Um, I'm in the process of re releasing my first book, well, actually, my second book. And one of the things that occurred to me that I thought I might want to do is to make an art book, uh, of character art to go along with the re-release of my second book. Now, this is something I would have never attempted in the past. Um, I had sort of given up on creating artwork, in any way outside of like using Photoshop. Um, and so Photoshop isn't, I don't know, for me, isn't really the tool for drawing. I don't know how to draw with a mouse. Like I gave it a shot a few times, but I didn't like it at all. Um, I love using a mouse for certain things, but not for drawing. I found that to be incredibly irritating, and difficult to use. So I really had no desire to try to train myself in drawing with a mouse. So I just figured no drawing on the computer. The thing that I was familiar with, what I grew up with, was using colored pencils. Um, and I mean, just to be honest, like I just kind of stagnated with what I was doing or even able to do with colored pencils, and it certainly didn't match my vision for like what I would want to do for an art book. And I've never had money, so hiring somebody to do the artwork for me, that would never have really been an option. So this is just not something that I ever thought of doing in the past. Um, Trying to create an art book to go along with my story. I just wouldn't have. I would never have thought of it as something that was remotely possible. Um, so what happened to kind of change my view on that was I I had learned from a fellow. I'm not going to remember his name off the top of my head, but it was an online article. I had learned from a fellow sort of how to create cards, like playing cards. So that really interested me. I've always loved playing cards. I've always been among the target audience for like CCGs and stuff like that. Um, but I don't like playing cards necessarily for the games you can play. Just be honest. Like I got sucked into the World of Warcraft CCG back when I played World of Warcraft. And really, what I loved about it was collecting the cards. I love playing cards. I love that format. I love the artwork. Um, just always really enjoyed that. So I was in for the World of Warcraft collectible card game, but not to play the collectible card game, right? Like that was never something that I really did. I didn't have friends who played it. I didn't play it myself. Um, it just wasn't it wasn't a thing for me to play the game. That has a really goofy looking mouth. Um, yeah, I think we're probably not gonna stick with that. Um, I wasn't doing it to play the game, like that wasn't. I just wanted the cards. I wanted to collect the cards. I thought the cards were really cool. Um, so anyway, I had learned from this fellow how to make cards, and I was really interested in like giving that process a try. That seemed like a lot of fun. Being able to make playing cards seemed like just the kind of thing I wanted to do. Um, so I started dabbling with it, and like I said, I've fallen out of practice with artwork, so I wasn't trying to create custom artwork or anything like that. I was using artwork that I could download online, and just trying to do the card design, um, figure out what they would look like. And along with that, I sort of decided that, what would really fit this whole desire would be to make a card game. Like that's kind of what I was wanting to do, and so I started designing a card game, and that process went really well. Like I've never finished the card game. I've not released it. I've been working on it now for 6 years or so. I've kind of fallen off. I'm not really doing much active work on the card game at this point. But designing the card game really stemmed from wanting to have a reason to make cards. Uh, so at a certain point, the designing of the card game was going so well that I felt like, okay, well, what if I got to a point where like I wanted to sell this, sell the card game, make it official, maybe make a profit off of it. How would I do that? I can't take this artwork that I've downloaded off of the internet and sell it. It's not mine. It would be right. It would be unethical. It would not be moral. I could easily get sued. Should probably get sued. Um, so what to do? Like as I've said before, I'm not going to hire somebody to make artwork. I really can't afford it. I actually looked into it just a little bit, thinking, well, maybe Fiverr, something like that. I could just pay somebody a couple bucks. They could make me something. And it's a nice thought. I'm not sure, like legally what is set up on Fiverr, but kind of the same moral implications for me. Like if somebody on Fiverr is accepting a job to make artwork for me, um, I have my doubts that they would be okay with me essentially making a profit off of their artwork. Like I'm gonna pay them a nominal fee to generate artwork, something that they're really good at doing, and then I'm gonna take that artwork that they've created and I'm gonna make a profit off of it. I'm gonna resell it as a card game. And I spent a great deal of time thinking about this. Thinking about like, okay, well, if I'm selling a card game, what percentage of the card game really comes down to the artwork, right? Like, if I did have to pay them some kind of royalty or something, and I wanted to be conscientious and do that up front, like what would the value of their work really be? And that's a hard question. But what I came up with was that the value of their work is definitely more than nothing. Like I don't think that you could stand and say I made a card game, and when people buy my card game, what they're after is the game, not the cards, not the artwork. See, I don't think that's true. I think, even in my own experience, that's clearly untrue. Um, when I'm buying a card game, I just realized I've bumped the mic a couple times. Sorry about that. If that's coming through on the audio. When I'm buying a card game, it's not really about the game at all. It's about the cards, it's about the artwork, and the look of the game matters a lot. And so, in that regard, I think it would be unfair to say, like, I could just pay an artist some nominal fee to create the look of my game and then pretend like uh, people are coming. This is a problem I don't have and probably never will have, but a problem worth thinking about, I think. If people were buying the game, that's a huge if. Um, and I could talk more about that if as well, but if people were buying the game, which they probably wouldn't, but if they were, it would be disingenuous for me to say, yeah, the profit should go to me. I designed the game. Um, the person who made the art, like, they're just putting stickers on the game that I designed. Well, I mean, that's kind of true in a sense, but also in another very real sense, as I've already expressed, like, for me, the artwork is a very motivating part of the whole experience. Like, I if the artwork hadn't been good for the World of Warcraft card game, I wouldn't have bought it. Like, I wouldn't have been into it. Um, and there's a nuanced and a rich discussion about the specifics of what that means. Like, what is good artwork for a card game? For like World of Warcraft, good artwork really and truly meant, like something that looked like the existing World of Warcraft game, right? Like, it's not just any art style. Like, I wanted an art style that I enjoyed, but it also had to be reflective of my game experiences with the game that I was playing. So in that sense, like, the game itself is also very important. There are multiple layers of that's too thin. There are multiple layers of artistry involved. It's not just the people doing the art for the cards. It's also the people who did the original art style for the game, right? Like, that can't be discounted. The original art style for the game is very important. Um, so there's definitely multiple layers in the idea of the art style being important. Um, but regardless of what you think of that, the main point was, like, I shouldn't be comfortable with having an attitude of, like, it's good for me to profit off of my game at the expense of whoever else is involved. And I think at the expense, maybe that's a strong wording. Maybe that's the wrong wording, but at the expense, um, in terms of they've made artwork that if I were making money, like, I'm profiting off of their vision, what they supplied to me, what they provided for me, uh, is compelling to people to the point that, I'm now making money off of it. And so I do think, like, that's at their expense. It was their ability and their vision that created the situation that I'm making money from. Okay? So that's the sense in which I would say it's at their expense. Really struggling with this thumb. And maybe I'll just come back to it. I don't know. I mean, I'm struggling with the whole hand, right? Like, this is a very fat finger here. It isn't quite right. Of course, I'm not even looking at the picture as a whole, so, it might not be too fat. I don't know. Sometimes I'll get, like, really focused in on one detail. I mean, look at the size of his wrist. So right here, between the size of his wrist and the size of his fingertip, I'm thinking this finger is very fat, and I'm really focused in on that. But the size of his finger might be correct in proportion to the rest of his body, and the size of his wrist might really be the problem. I don't really want to focus in on any of that right now. It's just the initial sketch. Anyway, so I was working on the card game, and the majority of the work, like, I really loved the cards that I was making. I really enjoyed the process of making the cards. But all the artwork came from artists who had posted their stuff online. And obviously, I think, very obviously, I can't sell that. Like, that's not a thing that I can sell for my profit. You know, like, I think that would be despicable to do that. And as I continue with talking about what's going on here, you may think, well, you're despicable anyway, and that's certainly fair. That's certainly part of the discussion. So, in any case, I got to the point where I felt like, all right, well, if I'm going to do this, I need to have my own artwork. I need to have artwork that I can legitimately say, okay, this is my artwork. I made it. It came from me. I'm the owner. So when it comes to a conversation of any kind of profit, like, you know, as the creator, I'm the one who should profit from the artwork, right? Like, that's an important place to be with the artwork that's going into my game. So in response to that, I started creating my own artwork for my card game. I started working on that. And where I started in doing that was in just making rough sketches. I was going to, since I'm very out of practice, I lack confidence in, you know, like, I have a vision in my head, but I lack confidence in, like, how to bring that vision to the page. So as a way of assisting myself in that process, I was going to free AI art generators that I could find, and I was using them to generate some images, and then I would look at those images and I would create some artwork off of those images, you know, based off of those images. And even at that, like, I was still very dissatisfied with the final product. Wasn't, to me, something that I would put on a card and say, this is my artwork, I'm proud of it. You know, it definitely wasn't at that level. So I felt like I need to do something a little more. Like, I don't want to just, I knew at that time, I knew I didn't really want to just take the AI generated art. I ended up getting a subscription to a service called Photor, and they, you know, in their Q&A, their FAQ on their website, I checked, and it says, yeah, you know, there was an FAQ about, do I own the artwork that I generate using your service? And they said, yeah, that's what it says in the FAQ. Now, I don't remember specifically how they said it, what the nuances of it are. My bad. I should know that. But the important part to me was, like, okay, so this stuff is, you know, it's like, I can say that it belongs to me. That's important to me. I need to be able to say that. If I'm going to use this for my game, I need to be able to say that it's mine to use. But then there's also like there's the wonkiness of AI art, right? Like the fingers are wrong. It doesn't quite understand what I'm asking it to do. That is often an issue. And so what I was doing, because I was at first I was having a lot of trouble getting the AI to just generate like something approximating the picture that was in my head. Um, and you can just say like I was bad at writing prompts because that's clearly the case. I was not good at writing prompts. So when I wrote the prompts, the output that I got just wasn't. It didn't match like what I was thinking I would get. I was thinking I would get this, and instead I got that. So what I did was I took some of my sketches that I had done, and I used them with, there's like a feature to base the generated image off of an existing piece of artwork, right? So I thought, all right, well, I'll do that. I will take something that I've already created that sort of, like, there are parts of it that line up with what's in my head, and I will use that as the baseline for the image generator, basically. And then in that way, and I was right, like that worked. So my initial thought was like, well, I really don't know how to do, a lot of these details, like the sheen on metal and fur and stuff like that. Like, I just never got that far. I drew every day for years, but I just never knew how to get to the point where I was learning this stuff. This is back in the 90s. If I can beg any kind of consideration, like this, there wasn't internet for me, at least. Like, I know somebody's gonna say there was 90s in the internet. There was internet in the wow. There was 90s in the internet. Yep. In fact, there still are 90s in the internet. There was internet in the 90s, and yeah, there was. We didn't have it. We didn't have a computer. Like we oftentimes didn't even have a television. So, like it was a different experience for me in that way. So in either case, I didn't have access to a lot of the information that people have free and easy access to now. So I didn't really know how to learn the things I wanted to learn. My dad is an amazing artist, an incredible artist. He's a potter, but he definitely learned the things that I would want to know in art school. But I think part of the issue there is like my dad's a hard worker. Like he's always busy doing projects, fixing things, building things, taking care of things. He has more projects than what he knows, what he has time to deal with. So it wasn't like he was sitting around watching television and didn't have time to talk to me about my desire to do artwork. It wasn't anything like that. It was more like I didn't know how to ask him what I would have needed to ask him. And he was busy. He was working. He was being a very good example of working and taking care of your family and taking care of the issues that life, just life in general, creates for people who are alive. I think, I mean, I'm going to assume everybody understands that. There's just stuff that comes up and somebody has to deal with it. And my dad was a guy who dealt with it. He did it. And I didn't know how to ask him for help to learn what I needed to learn. And the internet didn't exist. So I just sort of got frustrated and gave up and never learned how to do things. So when I was generating these images off of my own artwork, I was thinking, like the AI generator, it makes such a beautiful image. Like it gets a lot of the details right. There's no need for me to be involved in any of this. Like I lack the skill. This is based off of my work. It's, I can use it. It says so here on the website. Everything's fine. But I still, and like I kind of hold to that, sure. There's still a lot of problem with it just not looking like what I wanted. Like a lot of times I would generate an image and it'd be like, oh my gosh, this is perfect. This is so close to my vision. Plus, like I like some of the details that have been added here. Like I am happy with this, except this guy has like 14 fingers and I hate that. Like, what do I do about the 14 finger issue? Wow, that's a wild thumb. That's a wild thumb. That is not a good thumb. Anyway, well, I can't go into the image and make any fixes or corrections, without knowing how to do these things. So, I mean, essentially, what I'm kind of driving at is in order to create the artwork that I wanted, I did have to lean into having a style of my own, something that I could accomplish, a way of creating details in a piece of art that I could actually create. That became necessary in order to take the AI art that I had generated and make it good enough to be on a card, on a playing card for my card game. So what I did, and I was currently working as a data analyst at this time. So like my days were full of doing my job. But what I did with my free time was I worked on the artwork. I'm sorry. I'm struggling to think. I worked on the artwork, sort of for my game. I'm trying to think of, what I want to do is I want to show some of the artwork here. So I'm trying to think of how to do that. And thinking and talking is something that's gotten much harder for me to do as I've gotten older. So I'm struggling to think and talk, right? All right. Got a piece of artwork now. Let's try to size it so that it fits. Okay. So, let's see. I'm creating a new image. Like I'm using OBS to try to do this. I don't really know what I'm doing. I figured I could just learn as I go, right? Okay, boom, there it is. All right, let me size this a little bit. Here we go. Okay, so what is this? Well, this is actually somebody else's artwork, kind of. Somebody else did a piece of artwork which is essentially the same pose. It's very similar in a lot of ways, um, and it was the artwork that I used as a baseline for what I did. So this is probably, I think, the closest I've come to, like, I would call this pretty questionable. Um, I don't think it's morally bad. I guess, like, that's kind of where I sit with it. Um, I wish there were a way that I could know who the original artist was, first of all, and secondly, like, give them credit for the amount of inspiration they added to this project, which is a lot. Uh, I was thinking of some kind of pose for this character, and when I saw the base artwork for this, I was like, oh, that's it. That's exactly what I was thinking of. I'm trying to see if I still have the base artwork that I used. I don't think I do. I think I kept a copy of it. Well, I kept a copy of it somewhere, I'm sure, but I don't know where it is. So what I did was I took that artwork and I fed it into the AI, and the the artwork itself was a Japanese character, and I wanted not a Japanese character. I wanted more of an Indian character. Was really what I had envisioned this character to be, and so I started generating output based on the image, but with, different parameters, like you would. That's how AI works. Um, and I finally got something that I liked, and so from there I worked on it. And so how I worked on it is kind of, you're seeing the start of the process right here, right? So I've generated an AI image. Um, this is Okalau, who's one of the members of the White Council, and having character images of the members of the White Council is what I want to do for um, my art book. Hang on, what is this? We don't need that. We'll just get rid of it. Okay. Yeah, I'm obviously very unfamiliar with OBS, but we're learning. Anyway, Okalau here is one of the members of the White Council, and when I envisioned doing an art book for companion for my story, the White Council is a big part of that. Like, the White Council is hugely important to the storyline. Um, it is, what is a White Council? Fair question. It's a group of magic users. Um, in fact, it's like the preeminent group of magic users in the world, um, and they run the largest school that teaches people how to use magic, Dower Gujest. They more or less run Dower Gujest and teach other people how to do magic. That's what the White Council is. And it has, I forget, 15 members, 16 members, something like that. It has a bunch of members. Okalau is one of them. So I have in my mind an idea of who Okalau is. And then thinking about doing artwork for him kind of refine that a bit. Um, and so I wrote out a description, basically, of who I saw this person to be. and I put it in the text prompt. I think anybody who's used an AI image generator is familiar with this process, and started spitting out images. Um, and usually, I would say when I'm trying to create a baseline image, I do have an idea in my mind of like what I want to see. Um, I'm not I'm not like married to that idea specifically, but it's like a guideline of what I'm looking for. Um, yeah, I'm trying to think. Like there are certain things I was looking for as I was generating artwork for Okalau, specifically that like I wouldn't say. I wouldn't say on something that I would post publicly some of the features that I'm specifically looking for because I don't know. I just think people would take it badly. Um, and maybe because they really should. Maybe it's bad to think that way. I don't know. But, like I'm just not going to talk about it. But a couple things about this character specifically that I would talk about are that he's middle aged. So when I generated this artwork, I was, like I was happy with the white hair. I thought, okay, that fits. Like a lot of people around middle age, they start getting salt and pepper.
It's time for lunch. Remember to wash your hands.
I don't know if you heard Google in the background. Probably have to do something about that. But so I liked that about the image. I had a picture of him as a very strong, like obviously man. I wanted him to be a man. Him, like okay, that's pretty clear. Um, I wanted him to be a muscular man, self-possessed, strong, all of that. So I kept generating images, and so what I was trying to say about that is usually it takes a somewhere around 700 renders before I start really honing in what it is that I want. Maybe 100 to 200 before I've refined uh, my text enough that I'm generating things that are in the vicinity of like what's in my mind. Um, and then from there, it just depends. It depends on what the generator is spitting out. Um, but yeah, I would say somewhere around 700 or so on average. Obviously, it can be a lot more than that. It can be a lot less, but it's a fair few. It takes hours. It takes days, really, to come up with. Um, let's see here. Come up with. Oops! I really did it now. Made it angry. Um, to come up. Whoops! Come up with this image. Now you can see this image and this image are different, right? Like this image is my interpretation of this image. Although you've been watching me as I've been going, I'm just tracing it, right? And I say it that way. Like this is what I grew up with. You can draw something and do it freehand, and that's talent. Or you can trace something that somebody else or something else drew, and that's not talent. That's just tracing. And like that's not an unreasonable perspective. Hey, everybody, I I lack the talent to just draw this. Um, I'm tracing it from something that I created using an AI image generator. that is my process. Now I've put a lot of thought into it, and I'm comfortable with it. But I don't want anybody to get confused. Like, I'm not this talented artist who could just draw this from my head. I could be, I think. Like, that's a talent I could cultivate. Um, but it's not who I am, and it's not the talent that I have. And when I ask myself the question of, like, is it worth my time to get into this, to cultivate the ability to freehand draw this? The answer is no, absolutely not. It is not worth my time, because what I'm interested in doing is being a storyteller. Um, I want to use artwork to enhance my storytelling. But what I'm not interested in doing is being an artist. And I think in my head, to be able to create artwork like this, just freehand, just off the top of your head, that requires an investment in being an artist, and I don't want to spend the time to make that investment. Like, I'm 45. I don't necessarily even feel like I have the time to spend. So I don't think at this point that would be the right way to go. I just don't. Um, and does that make me a bad artist? Yeah, sure, absolutely. Like, if somebody could just draw this, and I've seen people doing that, they 100% have a lot more talent than I do. Like, this isn't even a contest, not even close, right? Um, and so, I've talked to a few people about this and sort of explained what I'm doing and some of my trepidation about it. Because, like, the people that I respect as artists in my life, this has absolutely been their response. Oh, you're just tracing. Yeah, I am. Just tracing. It's true. That's what I'm doing. Um, and that doesn't feel good, right? Doesn't feel good to be told that. Doesn't feel good for that to be the reaction. And I've talked to some of my friends about that, about what that feels like. And I think at the end of the day, what they've said and what I ultimately would agree with is it doesn't. That's legitimate for it not to feel good, but also, like, it's deserved, right? Like, I am just tracing. So it would not be good. This is the upshot of what I'm trying to say. It would not be good to be dishonest about this. You know, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I'm freehanding this stuff straight out of my mind. I am not. I am using a tool, using an AI generator to interpret my vision into a model that I'm then going to use. I'm just going to straight up trace it to create my end artwork. That's my process. That's what I'm going to do. And I've gotten better at it as I've gotten more comfortable with it. And it's not easy to do. It takes a lot of time. And I definitely have people that I know who have straight up said, if you're spending 40 hours on artwork that you traced from AI, that's a waste of time. You shouldn't do that. And I get the perspective. But here's what I'm working with. I don't want to invest years of my life into developing this skill. I don't feel like that's necessary, because what I want to do is I want to tell this story, and I want to have the artwork to go along with it. And I think this is a legitimate way of accomplishing it. So my process is I generate the AI artwork. I do the sketch over the top of it. A lot of times I do what I call hard shadows over the top of the sketch, which is Probably what I'm going to do with this one next. Let me show you. Let's show you another piece that I just finished working on. I don't even see them here. Oh, here we go. And actually, this one isn't. It's not done, right? I've not finished it yet. All right. So this is the hard shadows. That's the sketch. That's the original artwork. Okay. So there you go. Original to sketch. Just a tracing to hard shadows. Now the hard shadows, like, it's kind of in the same realm as the tracing. I think that's fair. Um, but there is a bit of interpretation. Like in this image, there aren't really like hard shadows. Like there's a couple maybe, you can see them in there where it's pretty dark. Um, but what I'm putting over the top is like definitively dark. This is more of like what I'd say is a comic book style, uh, you know, shadow. It's not blended at all. There's no dithering, no blending. Um, so that I would say requires a bit of interpretation on my part, right? Like I would say if you're looking here, this interpretation is not as good as the interpretation up here. I would say I did a better job there. Um, but none of it is exact to what's presented in the picture. This picture is done as like I think the preset is like a oil painting or something like that. And so like this, let me take the lock off here. No, maybe that doesn't work. I was trying to get to where you could see the pointer, um, but I guess it doesn't show. It doesn't matter. Like the shading in the sleeves on this is that's not black. That's a dark green. Um, there's a lot of blending and shading, and that's what gives it the realistic look. Like there are some hard transitions of color, like a very hard transition of color in this area. But, like this is green, the whole thing is green. Everything is green in there. Um, that takes more time to accomplish. I'm not opposed to it at all. Like, I've definitely gone down that road. But what I'm trying to do, like, this is the style that I've settled on with what I'm trying to do. This is what I want it to look like. Um, this is what I'm happy with. I mean, you can see, I don't think this gets any smaller, but you can see with all of these sketches, this is the style that I'm going for. And some of them, like the art that I generated, is a little bit different than other styles. I like that. I'm happy with that. Like I'm doing that on purpose. But basically, like this style is what I'm after. This more comic book style. So you can see I'm working on Okalau right now, and what I have left to do is Birch, Felino, Sudrio, and Sherba, and I'm pretty close to done. Um, so this is, I've kind of lost track of what I'm trying to say, but this is the process that I use to create artwork. Oh, I closed it. Okay, that's fine. And this is where I start. So how does that relate to this other drawing here? So started in the same place with that one, and as you can see with it, I did less hard shadows. In fact, I think with cast, I didn't do any hard shadows. The really, really dark parts that you see are just, like black, um, that I painted in. I didn't really do hard shadows. I think I succeeded in a lot of areas. Like, I'm really happy with how his chest and stomach turned out. I'm happy with his belt buckle and all of that. I really wanted there to be this tartan coming off of his right shoulder. And in my mind, it was like some kind of flannel cloth that I was trying to put in there. I don't think I did a very good job with that. Like, I think that's probably the weakest part of the drawing. This band on his arm, there is some funkiness to that I'm not happy with. I'm really happy with like how his face turned out. I'm really happy with how his hands turned out. I think there's some strong stuff. So all of those things, all of this shading and definition, this is me. This is what I did. But I did work off of a rendered image, and that's how that's how all of my drawings are gonna be, like Cass, um, Aelith. Just trying to work with this interface here. I don't know what is needed. Let's see. Dremic. These are the images that I made for my card game, right? So we got the Comoris Guardian. Let's see. Mao. This is all me. This is the very first one that I did, Messeth. Again, rendered an image in AI, and then, did my thing. This was the first time I did it. You can see, like, there's some things that are weak here. Like, her nose is super weird. I wish I would have done a better job on that. I'm really not at this point. I'm not going back to change it. Pinmay. Sedgwick. I spent a great deal of time on this one. Particularly happy with how his pauldrons came out. Not as happy with his sword. I think there's too much, just too big of a block of color in there, especially considering how nuanced everything else was able to be. But overall, very happy with it. Sibwente Guardian. This one's actually pretty close to. I used a source image to create the AI render, and I think, like, if you saw the source image, you'd be like, "Oh yeah, like that's almost just tracing the source image." It's not, but it's close. But again, like I'm really proud of like getting the metal effects done, halfway decent. Maybe not the best metal effects you've ever seen in your life, but the best for me of what I've done. I was happy with how his hand turned out and everything, which is, that's not what the render was. That was what I came up with. Here's one where what I did was I created a few renders and I settled on his face, but then there are elements added to this that were not in the render, like the lamp and his goat skull shoulder. Those were specific to the character. This is somebody else's character that I did artwork for. So I guess at the end of the day, what I'm saying is, yes, it is just tracing. But I think, like, I feel proud of the end results. I feel like I put a lot of myself into them. And I do feel like it's fair to say that, I have ownership over, like, this is my painting. I like the chainmail. I did that. That took quite a lot of time working on that. This is my work as an artist, not as an artist who is as skilled as some of the other people you'll see out there, but you know, as an artist. Um, so working on these images for my art book that I want to create. That's one of the projects that you'll see me working on. Um, I also am doing a lot of audio editing for the audiobook version of my book. That will probably be in these videos, or just recording the audio in the first place. That's pretty embarrassing for me because like I'm trying to do voices and stuff, but I think it's worthwhile to share it. I'm building a world anvil for D&D for two different D&D groups. That's something that I spend some time on. It might show up on here. It might not. I'm not sure. Um, Minifigure painting might show up. Writing might show up. That one I've been so back and forth on. I feel so uncomfortable sharing my writing, and I think it's pretty easy to explain. First of all, the process of writing is super boring. I think it's not really a spectator sport. It might just be so boring to sit for an hour and watch me wrestle with typing things out. And then, secondly, like my process of writing is very much like I will write something and then I'll leave it sit and I'll go back and read it. And then I've got to do revisions and edits and changes. Um, so watching me write something that isn't necessarily going to be the end product either. So that it can even be misleading, I guess. But those are the kind of projects that I want to share, and I want to, give you guys, give my kids a glimpse into what am I doing? Like, what does their dad spend his time doing? So that's what this is going to be about.